on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan. Hey, baby.
Hey, what's up? It's been a week.
Yeah, it's been a week.
What have we been doing all week?
Just living and stuff.
Just livin?
Yeah, we did a little bit of sitting and looking earlier.
We did some sitting and looking.
Yeah, we did a little
Now,
eating.
was it sitting and looking or setting and looking?
Well, you know, there's different degrees of it. When you're full on setting and looking, you're really just taking it all in.
I cannot find a single clothes hanger in this entire town.
Yeah, apparently just yet another victim of the COVID-related supply chain issues.
I'm curious. So my thought was, well, school is almost back in session, so perhaps it's like college students who are going to buy up like all the dorm supplies. So they've bought up all the hangers. But then again, I'm like, are there really that many college students shopping for hangers at this time?
Well,
This
apparently,
first week of August?
apparently so.
Yeah, we could not. I took my daughter out to find some hangers. We can't find hangers anywhere.
Well, I guess we'll just have to check again
It
later.
really puts a damper on my home abortion, but whatever.
Well, I can tell you this much. Ain't shit getting hung up tonight.
Well, that's true.
It's not happening.
Yeah, except maybe your sense of humor. I'm about to hang it up.
No, you know what? I'll show you some
But I'm-
hanger hacks. We can get multiple pairs of pants on one hanger. We can hang them under a shirt. It's called consolidation.
That sounds difficult.
It's doable.
I already have too many things. I can't sort through like layers of items on one hanger. That's too much.
Okay.
That's not going to work for me.
Okay, so what have you been doing?
Well, I've been working on a brand new podcast, Dylan. It is called Dancing with Myself. It is a solo show, written, directed, produced, starring me.
Hey!
It's called Dancing with Myself, and it is all about the 80s.
Yeah, and I think you said you were going to cover anything 80s, right?
All things related to the 1980s, movies, fun products, trends, fads, foods that were only around in the 80s, pop culture, historic events. There's so much, but it's called Dancing with Myself. You can check it out. It's on Apple, Spotify, pretty much everywhere you get podcasts. Shows drop Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the cool thing is it's like a little nugget of information. So they last anywhere from like 8 to 12 minutes. So they're like little mini episodes 3 times a week.
Yeah, I love the length because it's perfect for listening to in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can totally check out my podcast while you're taking a dump. I am not offended by this.
No, as long as you listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
The soothing sounds of my voice.
It's true. It helps.
It's like fiber. Like a natural laxative.
It's exactly like
Because I'm
fiber.
full of shit, and it's just going to come pouring out of you as well.
Okay, so here we are on this beautiful Mountain Murders episode. It's beautiful Mountain Murders evening.
August is Patreon month, Dylan.
Ooh.
Let me explain what that means. All month long, each case that Mountain Murders produces for the podcast are going to be suggested by our patrons.
Okay.
Right? And all of our Patreon episodes this month are going to be suggested by patrons.
That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Isn't that going to be awesome?
Yeah.
Our first case was suggested by Stephanie, a longtime patron and supporter of the podcast. She is a wonderful person. I mean, I think if Stephanie lived closer, we would be like best friends.
Y'all would be kicking it.
I like adore Stephanie. She is a blast. She suggested this case. She wanted to hear this case, and it's her birthday weekend, so we are going to oblige Stephanie. Happy birthday, Stephanie. This episode is dedicated to you. Thanks for loving the show.
Yes, thank you, and happy birthday, Stephanie.
And fuck Mary still.
And fuck Mary.
Okay.
I gotta say it like that.
Let's get into this. So this is like a slight departure from our typical Mountain Murders case. It's one of the bigger names out there in true crime, so you may be familiar with the story, but you've probably never heard it as detailed as I'm about to give it to you.
Well, that's always the case here at Mountain Murders, and I must say this guy is a notable true crime case, and I think he even sometimes these killers transcend true crime, period, and enter into the pop culture kind of umbrella of our society, and I think this gentleman truly did that very thing.
I have to say, this is like one of my favorite bad guys, like one of the best villains of all time.
Yeah, and I must say this was one of my first experiences with true crime that I was just like, after listening to him and seeing him, I was just like in awe of how this person was truly a killer, and you could tell.
Richard Kuklinski was born April 11th, 1935 in Jersey City, New Jersey, in his family's apartment located on 4th Street. His father, Stanley, was a Polish immigrant who worked as a brakeman on the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. His mother, Anna, was the daughter of Irish Catholic immigrants from Dublin. She grew up in the Sacred Heart Orphanage after her parents died, and she was fairly young at that time. At the orphanage, Anna was beaten by the nuns. At age 10, she was raped by a priest, and this caused Anna to grow into a very cold and austere woman.
Well, I mean, those are horrible things to happen to a child.
Absolutely horrible. I can't imagine.
And in this environment, I'm going to imagine that she didn't have a support group or really get to heal from this horrible event.
Well, no security.
No.
No safety. Your whole well-being is in the hands of these people who are beating you, and then you're sexually abused. It's just horrible.
And there's no one to turn to for help.
At 18, she was forced out of the children's home. Now, Anna had wanted to be a nun herself until she met Stanley at a church dance. Stanley at the time was a handsome 26-year-old who resembled Rudolph Valentino. When her new husband discovered she wasn't a virgin on their wedding night, he abused her, calling her a whore.
Okay.
She worked in a meat packing plant during Richard's childhood. Now, he was the second of 4 children. Florian was the first child born to the couple, but Stanley accused Anna of cheating and claimed the child wasn't his. And by the time Richard was born, it was already a strained, turbulent household, to say the least.
Yeah, looking at pictures of his parents, they were an attractive couple. His father was rather handsome. His mother was an attractive, pretty woman. But you can almost see the coldness in all the pictures of his father in his father's eyes.
Stanley was a violent alcoholic who beat his wife and children regularly. While Richard was still a young boy, his father abandoned the family, but would return on occasion drunk just to continue beating his children, especially Richard.
When you told me this, it's like, so you've shirked your responsibility of a family. You're not taking care of them, providing, but you show up now and again out of the blue and beat the shit out of everybody,
Yes.
including all the kids.
Yes, and his former wife.
What a monster.
He totally is. Now, as I mentioned, Richard had 3 siblings. His older brother, Florian, died of head injuries at the hands of his father, Stanley. Stanley and Anna hid the cause of death from the authorities, saying the young child had fallen down a flight of stairs.
Well, and back then, I think we all realize and know that there's a lot less investigation. They tend to take the man of the house's word for what happened and thing in some of these situations. You know what I mean? It's almost like you didn't question a man about his family, about his kids or his wife. Whatever he says happened.
Well, they didn't really have means to conduct a thorough autopsy.
No, and the forensic, all that stuff's non-existent basically. So yeah, you got a kid here who's obviously, got wounds to his head, and you just tell me he fell down the stairs. And then you got the wife backing up what the husband's saying.
Can you imagine this family?
But then the children
It's so dysfunctional.
witnessed, I'm sure, know very well why their brother died.
Florian was 8 years old at this time, and Richard was 5. This event would stick with him for the rest of his life. Yeah, I would say so. As a child, Richard was shy, awkward, and repeatedly bullied. This combination of isolation and abuse would mold him into the monster he would become. After Florian's murder, Stanley let up for a while on Richard, but soon he was back to hitting his young son while Anna would just stare at the wall praying. Richard was always covered in bruises, some so large they were described as looking like eggplants.
My God.
And this would keep him from going to school and playing outside.
Because he just constantly has signs of abuse all over his body.
Yes. His mother, Anna, was also abusive. She was described as a religious fanatic who would turn to stern discipline as part of a Catholic upbringing. So because she was raised by nuns and they were like, beating the devil out of her, she thought that was how you were supposed to parent.
Yeah, and she probably almost in a way didn't know any better.
And that if you were going to, be a good Catholic, that meant, you needed to beat the shit out of your kids.
Yeah, well, she came up with this abuse, being beat, there in the Catholic school and stuff, and she just thinks that's normal. And then she gets with someone, Richard's father, and he's abusive and mean. And I guess from her point of view, this is just how people are.
She would beat her son with broom handles and whatever other household objects she could find. Once, Anna even tried to murder Stanley with a kitchen knife, but that didn't quite work out in her favor.
My God, these poor children having to witness full-on combat between their parents.
Though Richard was forced to be an altar boy and attended church with his mother, he rejected Catholicism. Richard hated his mother. Later, he would describe her as a cancer. Not like she was born in July, but like literal cancer.
Damn, to have that much, those kinds of feelings for your parents. To think your mom's like a literal cancer that destroys everything around her.
Oh, well, you've met my dad.
Well, I mean, that's just not healthy.
He would later say that he didn't mind his mother's beating so much as the mental and emotional abuse she doled out. Her comments cut and left him feeling like shit. Her disappointment with life was blamed on her kids, and she made them feel they should do something to fix it. But no matter what the children did, it was always making her more miserable. Growing up, the family lived in poverty, and they grew up in a project-style, like tenement apartment building with a lot of other low-income families. The only clothes the children owned were the ones they had on their backs. Richard was teased so brutally as a child by the other kids that his nicknames were Richie the Rag Boy and Hobo Richie, something that would also stick with him for a long time. He hated being poor. When his threadbare clothing finally fell off his skinny frame, his mother would try to scrape together enough to buy a new shirt or a pair of pants, but she would buy them so oversized that he would never grow into them.
My God. So they literally had just like an outfit or two, and that was it.
Yes.
To wear every day to school. Everywhere you go, people see you in the same clothes.
Yes.
And those clothes were sometimes secondhand and threadbare when he got them in the first place.
He was a loner who didn't hang out with the other kids. Instead, he preferred being alone, and one of his favorite activities was people watching. I love to people watch.
That is the most entertaining thing you can do almost anywhere you go.
Humans are funny. It's strange.
Yeah, we like to people watch and make up backstories to support, and then try to discover evidence to support our theories.
Yes. He would watch drunk sailors procuring prostitutes, neighborhood folks haggle over the price of potatoes, and tired factory workers dragging themselves in and out of the Maxwell House factory. It was then that he developed his further feelings about humanity. It was all garbage, including his own life. When Richard came home, after the kids in the neighborhood would beat him up, Stanley would throw his son back outside, calling him a chicken and a coward. He would say, "No son of mine is going to be a chicken shit." When Richard began hitting back with these neighborhood boys, this one incident, their father came out to intervene. That's when Stanley came barreling outside and attacked the father, saying, "Where were you when they were beating up my boy?"
Well, Stanley has a good point there, I would say.
Finally, Stanley did end up shacking up with a Polish woman and left the family alone. Richard was dyslexic and he struggled through school, getting hit by nuns with rulers when he used his finger to keep up with reading on the page. He's just getting it from all sides. He's getting it at home. He's getting it anytime he's out in the neighborhood by these other kids, bullying him, terrorizing him. And then he's got the nuns beating the shit out of him at school.
Well, I mean, you would almost expect that he had to have experienced a childhood similar to this to make him such a cold adult, because he's a very cold human being who doesn't care either way, doesn't think anything bad or good about the things he does.
In his early childhood, Richard was described as a class clown. He was really funny, always making the other kids laugh, and he would joke around a lot, but the nuns beat that sense of humor out of him.
I bet the nuns beat the sense of humor out of a lot of kids.
Not surprisingly, Richard began turning his rage on animals, which we see a lot with, the McDowell triad? Yeah, so stray dogs and cats became a focal point of his anger. And if you don't like hearing about animal torture, you might want to skip ahead a minute or two. He would torture them to the point of sadism, beyond what a normal child might do. He threw them in the incinerator of his apartment building. It became so bad that neighborhood folks began noticing that all of their pets were missing and knew they had like a pet murderer in the neighborhood.
Oh my God.
Like a pet serial killer.
Jesus.
I'm not even going to tell you the other torturous, horrible things he would do to animals, but it was bad.
So what do you think drove him? You think it was a sense of control or
Power
over these creatures?
Yeah, I think so.
Inflicting pain on something else instead of him receiving it?
Yes.
Okay.
His first crime was stealing food. So Anna was not a very good mother, casually forgetting that her children needed to eat. With rent and utilities to pay, Anna worked constantly, but there was never enough to eat. He would get up early, hijacking cookies and cakes from delivery trucks. When his mother found out that he was stealing these food items, she would abuse him. But Richard also became interested in true crime, and he would steal detective magazines as well. Richard would break into train boxcars to take food like pineapples, oranges, and frozen meats. Finally, Anna began accepting the bounty Richard would bring home, as it was food that she couldn't afford.
Well, it sounds like she's not in, they're in dire circumstances and she's trying, working all the time. But still, I mean, how sad is it she catches them stealing food out of necessity, and instead of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you have to do this, maybe we can improve our circumstance, she beats them. That's always the answer to everything, beat them more.
Richard was the man of the house, so Anna looked to him to start fulfilling his father's role. Everyone, including his siblings, began to depend on Richard as the breadwinner. One of the first crimes he committed was during the same period when he stole crates of wine from the Manischewitz plant. I think I'm saying that correctly. Figuring that the wine had to be worth something. It wasn't that he even thought of selling the wine. Richard simply wanted to have something that had value.
Just something to make him feel
like he had something.
Yeah.
Just anything. Because he was so poor and had nothing. Richard went to the basement of his apartment building to drink the wine. And it made him sick that night. He didn't tell his mother that he was ill. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later he felt he had gotten away with stealing the wine. And it was finally his. So he was just like tickled to death that like he had gotten something that had a little bit of value.
Yeah, it sounds like he drank a little too much too fast.
Probably. Well, the bullying was the worst part of Richard's life at this point. He felt like getting beat up by his parents was one thing, but being beaten by other kids was something he should be able to control. There was a neighbor named Charlie that had a gang, and he often picked on Richard, even physically attacking him. Now, at first, Richard tried to fight back, but the other kids in this so-called gang would jump in and start beating him even worse. So he would be attacked by like a gang of kids.
Well, yeah, and most people can't stop multiple people from beating them up. I don't care who you are.
I'm terrified of roving gangs of children. Children are scary.
We were contemplating this earlier today, if the children nowadays will be motivated enough to create a modern-day Children of the Corn scenario.
maybe the right type of child, but for the most part, they would just be like, "Hey, did you see this TikTok?"
Yeah, I know. I don't think they can make it on their own.
Well, on the day of Richard's confirmation at church, which, by the way, his mother didn't attend, she got time and a half pay on Sundays. He spotted his tormentor Charlie wearing a shiny blue suit. All the kids that were, getting their confirmation on this particular day, I'm not really sure how that works. I'm not Catholic. They all had on these brand new watches, all but Richard. And this didn't sit well with him. So the next day, he saved a whole dollar and went to a store where he bought a watch that was 79 cents. He bought himself this watch and he just never felt more proud. It was a few days later, one dark night, that Richard lay in wait outside the project apartment building in the shadows. When he spotted this Charlie guy walking up, in the darkness, Richard grabbed a metal pole. After a confrontation in which Charlie called him a few ethnic slurs, Richard began hitting him with the metal weapon. While Charlie screamed, 13-year-old Richie felt something he had never known before: power. He gained strength with each blow as he rained down hell on the boy who made his life such misery for years. It was like a drug coursing through his veins. He then stole a car, driving the body down to the Pine Barrens. He removed the body from the trunk, used a hatchet to cut off the fingers, and remove the teeth from inside the boy's mouth. Using what he had learned from these true crime magazines, Richard successfully disposed of this young man's body.
Jesus. So this was the first time he killed.
Yes.
Yes, and even up through adulthood, if he was ever made to be to feel humiliated or belittled, especially in front of other people, that he couldn't let that alone. He had to do something about it. And so just something as small as not having been the only boy without a watch there in front of everybody else, something like that messes him up for some reason.
Well, the next morning, Richard took a bat and beat every member of Charlie Lane's gang. He learned it was better to give than receive. He took this metal pole that he'd used as a murder weapon, scrubbed it in the bathtub, and hid it in his closet. He skipped school for the rest of the week, waiting for the cops to show up, but they never did. Now, eventually, the nuns told his mother that he had skipped school all week, which caused him to get another brutal beating with a broom. But days turned to weeks, and nothing ever happened. Richard realized he'd gotten away with murder. So after a while, Richard viewed the secret as something that made him valuable. It made him someone.
Jeez Louise.
To have the secret.
Wow.
The only person in Richard's life to be nice was his Uncle Mickey. Mickey had done well for himself. He lived in a nice, clean house with top-notch wardrobe, lots of good food. Richard learned that not everyone lived in a dirty project apartment. He coveted this first-class lifestyle, and it was something that he wanted for himself one day. The bullies began leaving Richard alone, and he started making friends for the first time in his life. Eventually, Richard formed a group called the Coming Up Roses Gang.
Ooh, that's a good name.
They stole items from warehouses and wealthy individuals. He had little time for school. He began hanging out in pool halls, and Richard mastered the game, learning tricks, and found that he could make money betting on the games. Richard became a slick, soft-spoken hustler, and he could beat the pants off of challengers.
So, yeah, I think especially back in the day, you can make quite a bit of money hustling at pool.
Just came to play pool fats.
Yeah, and obviously the hustle is someone doesn't know who you are. You come in there, you play a couple of friendly games. You look kind of mediocre, maybe mid-level skill, and then you can let them beat you, essentially. And then once money hits the table and it gets up to a certain size, you just whoop their ass. You run the table out with some crazy-ass trick shots.
Thanks, Paul Newman.
And then they know
for the rundown.
They just got hustled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Fast Eddie.
Damn.
Once Richard caught his mother having sex with the married neighbor man next door, and he realized what a hypocrite she was. And this caused him to hate Anna even more.
So because she had been on him about being righteous and doing all these things to be right.
Yes.
Not sin, and I'm sure always over the top about sinning and making amends to God and all this shit. Then she turns around and cheats with a married man, which is a very big deal back then.
Richard had grown a reputation around Jersey City and Hoboken. Few wanted to tangle with Kuklinski. I mean, even as a teenager. There were groups of men that would be out and about, and Richard wouldn't back down in fighting them. It didn't matter if it was one guy or 30 guys, to the point of being reckless.
Well, yeah, I'd say he, at this point, had grown up to be a pretty big youngin'.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big kid. He's like 6'5" as an adult, but as a teenager, he's like, over 6 feet tall, weighs probably well over 200 pounds. I mean, he's a big guy, and he's hustling these dudes at these pool halls. So with that comes alcohol, comes violence.
Well, yeah, when people realize they've been hustled, they're like you said, they've been drinking, and they're mad, and now they want to fight. But then you got this kid, this young guy, who will fight anybody and has been beat and horribly abused all his life, right? By his parents, no less, by nuns, by whatever, by everybody, like you said. And he just doesn't give a fuck.
He was 16 when he got his first gun, a .38 revolver, from a guy at one of his pool hall hangouts. Richard committed his second murder of an Irishman named Doyle, who also happened to be a cop.
Uh-oh.
Doyle hung around the pool hall drinking, and he was often belligerent. When Richard played this guy for money, Doyle began calling him a dumb Polak, which is one of those ethnic slurs that would send Kuklinski over the edge.
Don't humiliate him.
Do not call him names. Don't make fun of him of his Polish ancestry. It really fucking makes him mad. Okay, and Doyle also looked like his father, Stanley.
Oh, that's two strikes.
So this guy's just fucked up all around, right? So afterwards, Richard follows this man. When Doyle goes outside, he climbs into his car. He's drunk. He falls asleep. That's when Richard goes down to a gas station around the corner, buys some fuel, and pours gasoline all over the car. Striking a match, he throws it into this vehicle. Flames quickly consume the cop's car, killing him.
So he just burns him alive.
Richard adored the screams he heard coming from Doyle as he burned to death. And he didn't tell anyone, not even his fellow gang members, that he had been responsible for Doyle's death.
Wow, I'm sure that was a sensational story around the area there. Here's this kind of asshole cop murdered or burned alive in his car, and everyone's talking about it. And then Richard, I think, gets something, like you say, he feels like somebody because he did this thing that everybody's talking about.
By 16, Richard was a very tall, handsome young man with almond-shaped eyes and Slavic cheekbones. He was shy, and women, especially older women, were attracted to him. He met a woman at the bar that he ended up moving in with, and her name was Linda. Richard stopped spending time at home altogether and slowly quit visiting his mother. By this time, Richard's 16, so his younger sister was a few years behind him, and she was earning quite a reputation for being promiscuous around the neighborhood. And Richard didn't like this.
No, I wouldn't want to be the guy who's banging Richard's sister, bud.
So what's really interesting about Richard, and I'm going to bring up several points over the course of the story, is that despite his violent personality, these fucked up things that you'll hear that he does, he also has this very strange, almost like a moral code.
Yeah, he has these things he will not do, or he can't stand by if other people do it.
Like promiscuity. He frowns upon that. And despite the fact that he does all these other horrible things, he is kind of a faithful man.
Right.
It's very strange.
So the fact that he will kill someone because they humiliated him, just over nothing basically, is okay in his mind. But he has this moral code about promiscuity. He's not going to harm women and children, things like that.
On multiple occasions, Richard would warn his sister to keep her drawers on. Not the drawers. Oh no, I'm wearing pantaloons. His younger brother Joseph was a hot mess. Joseph didn't do well in school. He had an antisocial personality. And Richard, during this time, tried to talk to his younger brother, but it just never seemed to sink in. So once Richard learned that his father, Stanley, had again returned to the family apartment to abuse Anna, Richard took his .38 gun and placed it to his father's forehead and told him, if you ever go near my family again, I'm going to kill you, and I will dump your body in the river.
Wow, so his dad's still showing up out of the blue to beat everybody, mess with him. And he
16 years later, and he's still doing this shit.
Richard's had enough.
Years later, Richard would confess that one of his biggest regrets was not murdering his father.
Wow.
The Coming Up Roses gang was making money and earning a reputation. Richard was pissing away his money on gambling and buying nice, garish suits. He wore these suits in colors like yellow and pink, just daring other men to make fun of him. Richard started drinking, and when he did, he was like Stanley. Mean, verbally abusive, just kind of an all-around asshole.
Well, yeah. Well, you see,
Not a good drinker.
the victims of abuse, they lash out in different ways. His sister with her promiscuity. I got to think that's connected to her home life. And then Richard with becoming the bully after having been bullied all this time.
Members of the De Cavalcante crime family began taking notice of the Coming Up Roses gang. Carmine Genovese, known as Meatball, a made man, overheard stories, about this Coming Up Roses gang. They were known as fearless, they were stand-up guys, and incredibly violent. He found all of this intriguing. All of the kids who came up hard and were looking to earn would join this Coming Up Roses gang. So Meatball invited the gang to his house one afternoon for a business proposal. And though Richard knew he could never be a made man because he wasn't Italian, he could earn as an independent contractor. The mob owned most of New Jersey. Meatball hired the gang to take out a man who lived in Lincoln Park. So when other gang members failed to do the hit, Richard took charge. His third body and first paid hit was a success.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're in a mob, you're going to need other people that are truly violent and don't give a fuck. And so you're going to take notice when there's this group of young guys who other tough guys are talking about.
Richard earned the admiration of his fellow gang members who said he was cool as a cucumber and cold like ice. He felt nothing. Richard killed the mark without any emotion. Paid $500 for a job well done, Richard was welcomed into the world of organized crime. Meatball felt that the best way for a man to prove his loyalty was to commit murder. The first induction into any mafia family usually entailed carrying out a killing. Richard was on his way to becoming a superstar hitman in the world of organized crime. Meatball gave Richard and the Coming Up Roses gang a ton of work, mostly hijacking trucks filled with electronics, jewels, tools, machinery, caviar, steaks, and whatever else they could turn into a quick profit.
It sounds just like The Crew and The Goodfellas.
Totally. And no matter how much money he made, Richard was always living large and gambling, so he needed money constantly. It seemed he could never make enough money. He loved the racetrack, loved everything about Las Vegas, and was a huge fan of Liberace.
Yeah, I know it's fun. I found it interesting, some of the things I've looked into while you were doing your research. They're like, oh, he doesn't drink, gamble, or any of this stuff. And you're just like, that's just not true. If you look into his real history.
There's a lot of misinformation, and I think a lot of people take one of the first documentaries about Kuklinski where he's interviewed and they think that's, the gospel. But later on, Richard would give other interviews where he would become more honest.
And basically
admitted to all the things he did.
Admitted that he was lying kind of earlier.
Yeah, so there's this notion that Richard was like this great family man, that he didn't drink, he wasn't a gambler. No. He was a degenerate gambler. He was a fucking alcoholic, and he beat the shit out of his wife and kids. Like, he's not a good guy. And the movie The Iceman, starring Michael Shannon, who is me, Al, by the way, that movie is garbage. There's nothing about it that's truthful. It's like fan fiction.
Yeah, I have no idea why they didn't just tell the real story of Kuklinski, and Michael Shannon would have been the perfect person. That was the only good thing about that movie, was him being cast as
Right.
the Iceman.
So if you've ever watched the film The Iceman with Shannon and Winona Ryder, don't believe that movie. It's not accurate. So if that's the story you've heard, then you haven't heard the real truth about Kuklinski.
And that's why you're here.
Everything about Sin City turned him on. He loved the showgirls, the lavish hotel rooms, and yet he rejected sex workers. And people would say that when he was in Vegas and he's like the high roller and he's spending money, that these, ladies of the night would come over, try to seduce him, offer their services, and he would reject them. He said those kind of women didn't do anything for him.
So he just basically looked down on prostitutes and sex workers.
He did. Like I said, he had this very strange kind of moral compass. And you would expect a man like this, who's out in the bars, pool halls, hustling, doing all this crazy shit, that he would just be like a sex machine or something. That he would be like Fredo in Vegas.
Right.
But he wasn't at all.
But again, it's about promiscuity and, some whatever. He just want to go against his own code.
Tied to that Catholic guilt, right?
I guess.
2 of the Coming Up Roses gang members decided to stick up a mafia-backed card game without Richard's knowledge.
Oh, and that's never a good idea.
When a DeCavalcante family member recognized the 2 men, he brought it to Richard and was like, hey, you need to take care of your friends. So Richard's really torn because these are his only friends. He had worked with them for a few years. They were very loyal to each other, had each other's backs. But Richard recognized what needed to be done. It was their blood or his, after all. Like, he knew it was it's either me or them kind of thing.
Well, yeah, if he doesn't take care of it, the mob people will, and they'll take care of him as well.
Richard found his 2 friends and shot them dead in the street so the DeCavalcante family would know Richard meant business. So, of course, this just further seals, Richard's reputation with the mafia.
Well, not only is he a cold-blooded killer, he also, in their eyes, does the right thing and is a stand-up guy who's never going to flip on them.
Well, after this, the Coming Up Roses gang kind of grew afraid of Richard, and they drifted apart. Many of the gang members started using heroin. Richard was adamantly against the use of heroin. He thought people who did drugs were just terribly trashy.
Or made bad decisions.
He just didn't like them at all. So Richard once again was on his own. He went through a period when he was about 19 of traveling into New York City and killing homeless men or anyone that rubbed him the wrong way.
So this is just for his own enjoyment.
Yeah, he almost was going into the city on the hunt. He knew he wanted to kill someone and would go to a bar and wait for some asshole to piss him off.
So all this stuff you're describing, all the killing his own friends, kind of starting this this gang that's being very successful, getting noticed by real tough guy real gangsters.
Wise guys.
This guy's not even fucking 20 years old.
No, he's still a fucking kid.
So, that just goes to show how quickly and how he just kind of burst onto the scene, and they're just like, oh my God, this kid, is the perfect employee for us.
But Richard did refuse to kill women and children. He absolutely would not do that. Murder became his sport. He dumped bodies in the Hudson River or sometimes just left them where they lay. Richard didn't intentionally look for homosexual men, but he says when they got too aggressive with him, he would kill them.
Oh, so making a pass at him or something like that?
Yeah, he recounted a story in the book I've been reading, which I'll give you at the end of the podcast, about going to a bar and a man hitting on him, and Richard was like, I'm not interested, and the guy kind of kept escalating the situation, and so Richard got aggravated and killed the dude.
Well, that's the thing. You can literally just aggravate him or just slightly annoy him, but for whatever reason, once you click or cross a certain line with him, He feels like he's got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And he will kill you.
When he was drinking, Richard was mean, and he knew these murders were mostly fueled by alcohol. He would go to the bar, get drunk, and then just look for someone to kill.
That's insane.
Dylan, let's pause for a moment, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So before the break, Dylan, I mentioned that Richard was a mean drunk, and he knew that most of these murders were fueled by alcohol because the more he would drink, the more angry he would get at anything he viewed as a slight and had to retaliate. But, I mean, let's be honest, he also enjoyed killing.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that made his temper shorter, and that seemed to be the thing that set him off. You pissed him off. So that's definitely not going to help the situation.
He killed people in Rhode Island, New Jersey, and all around New York City. Richard felt the people he was murdering were throwaway people. Bums, hobos, drug addicts, and occasionally a gay man. No one cared about the victims, so Kuklinski continued getting away with murder. When his mafia connect, Carmine, or, Meatball, landed in jail on some gambling charges, his Coming Up Roses gang had ceased to exist. Richard was making less money. He had to take a regular job unloading trucks. He had a friend who was a teamster that managed to find work for Richard whenever he needed it. His relationship with the older woman, Linda, was in trouble when she told him she was pregnant.
Uh-oh.
Richard didn't love her. He felt she was a horrible housekeeper. He basically was using her for sex. He was a young guy.
Damn it,
He didn't think there
Richard.
was any sort of potential there. Richard tells her, "You have to get an abortion." And she refused. Richard had no problems beating a woman, so he physically abused her quite often. Linda wanted to settle down, get married, and for Richard to get a straight job. Most of their disagreements were settled with a slap upside the head from Richard. He even tried making her lose the baby by punching her in the stomach. But it didn't work this time. Like, Linda was not going to relent on this keeping the baby thing.
Jesus.
Like, she wants the baby. Doesn't matter how many times Richard punches her, hits her, slaps her, throws her downstairs, kicks her in the stomach. She's going to keep this baby.
I've heard this type of abuse outlined more than, in many different stories. A man abusing a pregnant woman because typically he doesn't want her to have the baby. And that just seems like such a monstrous thing to do. Intentionally punching a pregnant woman in her stomach.
Yep.
That's just a horrible, horrible, to be capable of that. I can't even wrap my mind around it.
I know, right? And you would think since Richard grew up in such like a horrific abuse that he wouldn't want to lash out and abuse people.
Well, you go either way.
But here he goes.
Yeah, it's the same thing with sexual abuse. You either don't withdraw from sex completely and just it's not a part of your life, or you become the sexual abuser. And he's done that. He's the bully. He's the mean guy now.
Well, Richard ended up marrying Linda at City Hall, but he didn't tell anyone. He justified the marriage as doing it for the kid.
I'm doing it for the kid because I couldn't punch it out of her.
Pretty much. Richard was a moody adult. He had these extreme highs and extreme lows. Linda said she never knew if he was going to come home with fresh cut flowers and candies or throw her up against the wall.
God, she's living in a constant state of hyper awareness, like just never knowing what's going to walk through the door.
Yeah, because sometimes he was very kind and generous and treated her very well and would buy her expensive gifts and take her out on these, nice dates, buy her fancy clothes, jewelry, flowers, could be like the most romantic man. And then the next minute, he would have a mood swing and just punch her in the mouth.
Or get pissed off the way she prepared his dinner or something and just beat the shit out of her.
By now, Richard's reputation around Hoboken and Jersey City was sealed as a violent, dangerous man. With the birth of his son, Richard felt no emotion. He didn't go to the hospital when Linda went into labor or during the birth. However, he had no issues getting her pregnant pretty quickly after the birth of their first son with a second child.
So he didn't want the first child, and then immediately she gets pregnant after having the first child.
Yeah, he don't want the baby, but he can't stop putting it in her.
Yeah, I know.
He's throwing it in a.
He's throwing it.
He's throwing it.
Okay.
Yeah, since this episode is for Stephanie, I lived in Massachusetts for a bit, and we had a friend, and that's what he would say is, "You gonna throw it in a?"
Damn. It's,
And I was like, "What is that? What?" Yeah.
oh, and that was his. Are
Like
you
it-
going to have sex?
Yeah, you gonna throw it in a?
Oh.
You gonna throw it in a?
That's so romantic.
Yeah, he was a charmer.
I'm sure he was.
No, he was not. So Linda is seeing this arsenal of weapons that Richard has around. He's got guns, he's got knives, but she never once asked him about his work or why he had these weapons.
Yeah, so he just tells people around them and, whoever he interacts with, he's just a businessman.
Yeah.
I'm a businessman. Never describes the business, never goes into specifics. But yeah,
Richard may not have been a good father, but he says he never hit his children. As a matter of fact, he beat the hell out of a man who he witnessed hitting a child at a public park. Richard said, quote, "I don't kill women, I don't kill children, and anyone that does doesn't deserve to live." He also hated sexual predators and was always on the lookout for these types of people. He called them vermin, and he liked killing them.
so if he became aware of or thought someone was this
A
vermin,
rapist, a pedophile, he would fuck them up.
he would just kill. So kind of like a Dexter mode at that point.
I have an example. So Richard has a story about one night he's walking alone. It's late at night. He's down by the Hudson River when he encounters two drunk men wearing leather.
Ooh.
Which, so I'm like, so were they like a, like a village person, like leather, or they were wearing chaps because they're cowboys?
I think I need an entire leather outfit.
I wish you had a leather outfit. Well, he encounters these two drunk men raping a boy. Richard pulls out his .38 and shoots these two guys. He later said he very much enjoyed murdering these rapists.
Wow, so he catches them in the act, and he doesn't hesitate, and he just kills them.
No. And then says the teenage boys, like, pulling up his pants, like, "Thank you, mister. Thank you so much. You saved me."
Okay.
After killing someone, Richard said he felt relaxed, good, and at peace with himself. He was addicted to killing. He said it was like the best high he could imagine. So back then, precincts in New York City were keeping track of the murders, like within their jurisdiction, but they weren't communicating with the other precincts.
Wow, so even inside in the city itself, these different boroughs
Right.
were not communicating with each other.
No, not at all. So most of the men that Richard was killing and the police were finding all over the city were homeless men or just people that no one cared about. With no witnesses, no clues, and no one seeming, to know anything, the police were just turning a blind eye to all these murders. Meatball, or Carmine, sent Richard to Chicago to collect $70,000 from a guy named Anthony DePetty. Now, the first night they're in town, this guy DePetty runs Richard all around Chicago, taking him to all these different bars, but never paying Richard any money.
Whoa.
And so Richard's there to collect 70 grand, and that's a lot of money.
So he's just here to get the debt. Either you pay or I'm going to fuck you up.
They go to a hotel. The guy tries to sneak out the window. Richard catches him real quick, calls up Carmine. Carmine's like, if the motherfucker doesn't pay you, throw his ass out the window without a fire escape.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the second day rolls around, and it's much of the same kind of thing. Richard's really annoyed. This guy DePetty is like taking him all over town to these different bars, claiming that, well, people are here that owe me money. I need to go collect so I can pay you. Just giving Richard the runaround.
Which is not going to work out for you because eventually you're going to piss the Iceman off.
Well, as the evening is coming to a close and Richard's like, dude, if you don't fucking pay me, you owe my boss money, I'm gonna fucking kill you. The guy whips out the money. And Richard's like, you had the money all the time? Why didn't you just give it to me? And this guy DePetty tells Kuklinski, yeah, I had the money. I just didn't want to have to pay it.
Oh my God. Does he leave him alive?
No. See, this made Richard so angry because he's like, what kind of scumbag doesn't repay his debts?
Again, that falls in line with his
Yeah.
moral code.
He was so mad that he crams this 38 into Petty's chest and pulled the trigger. Now, when Richard goes back home, he pays Carmine the $70,000 the dude owed him, and he tells Carmine, look, I got to tell you something. You know, I shot the guy. Carmine's response was, good, bravo. We need to teach these people a lesson.
So even if you pay, you fucked me around. You made me jump through all these hoops, wait on my money. I'm still going to fuck you up.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a pretty good lesson.
Carmine hired Richard to take out a made man, a mob boss named Arthur DeGillo. He gave the hitman very specific instructions. He told Richard, when you kill him, shove the man's credit cards up his ass.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
a credit card's not going to fit in your ass properly.
well, we'll see about that. So Richard had to wait for the perfect moment to kill this guy, DeGilio or whatever, because the man always had bodyguards. Again, he's like a mob boss. He's a made man. Richard basically has to, like, stalk the guy and, like, hunt him and wait for the, like, right moment.
Yeah, because this isn't another citizen who's borrowed money and pissed off some mob guy. This is another violent gangster.
Well, when Richard was finally able to kidnap the man, he threw him in the trunk of his car. He drove the mob boss to a specific location, beat the man's legs with a baseball bat, breaking every bone in the man's legs, while saying, this is happening because you stole from your boss.
Damn.
He pulled out the credit cards, explaining what Carmine had requested. Richard then smashed the man's skull in, pulled down his pants, and stuck the credit cards in the right slot.
Ooh.
Yeah. He then rolled the man up in a tarp, abandoning the body in a vacant lot in Bayonne, New Jersey. Other mafia families, seeing this work that Richard had done, began hiring him to do jobs. Still, most of the money that he was earning went to gambling.
So he's bringing in these large amounts of money for these murders, for these assassinations.
Yeah.
At this point, he's making a lot of money. But he's still spending it as fast as he gets it, right?
His second son, David, was born, and Richard still viewed the children with indifference. The relationship with Linda was strained. He gave her money sometimes, but that was about it. So once Joe, Richard's brother, told him that he had seen Linda with a man named Sammy, who was some guy from the neighborhood, hanging out at a motel. Richard was very angry. He busted up into the motel room, sees Linda and Sammy naked rolling around in bed together, and that's when he began smashing every bone in the man's body, while Linda's eyes nearly pop out of her head with shock.
Oh my God. Dude, you just fucked the wrong guy's wife.
When finished with Sammy, Richard tells Linda, if you weren't the mother of my children, I would kill you. Instead, he takes out a knife and cuts off her left nipple.
Oh my God.
Then he cuts off the right one. Richard then leaves Linda at the motel bleeding. And at that point, their marriage pretty much over. It had been estranged up until this point, but Richard still considered Linda his wife, right? And even though they're estranged, they're not sleeping in the same bed, they're not having sex together, they're not really like a couple, he still views her as, you're my wife. So again, this like sense of morality of like, how dare you cheat on me?
So basically, they're separated.
Yeah.
To the point where they're not living together, not sharing the same space and bed. But he still finds it wrong for her to be in a hotel, no less, with some guy from around the neighborhood. And he just thinks about how that reflects back on it and makes him look bad. He's not going to have that.
No. So after this, he has nothing else to do with Linda. And that guy, Sammy, quickly moved out of Jersey City and never returned.
Well, I think that was a good call.
Oddly enough. So by 24, Richard is drinking heavily and losing money, gambling, just hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, money comes in and goes right back out. He wasn't happy with his life, and at that point, Richard knows that he needed to do something about the drinking and gambling, but he doesn't quite know how to get a grip on his addictions. But he knows, like, I've got to do something.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's going to cause you when you notice problems. He's probably thinking that it's making him out too out of control, and maybe a blurry mind. He's not sharp enough.
Well, it was around this time when he was about 24 that he was growing more concerned about his brother Joseph. Now, again, Joseph's kind of been a fuck up his whole life. He's not done well in school. He seems to always be in trouble. He's got this very antisocial personality, and Richard's tried to keep him on the right track. Like, you don't want to go the same route as me. You need to stay in school. You need to get a job, do something with your life. But Richard is hearing these rumors that Joseph is gay and he's using drugs like heroin. Now, Richard decided he needed to go to one of these gay bars where his brother was allegedly hanging out. Goes to the bar to spy on his brother. He is in shock as he watches his brother kissing a trans woman.
So here you go. Two things Richard doesn't like, apparently. Gay man, being gay, and using drugs.
He's watching. His brother is making out with this trans woman. Richard is beside himself. Like, he can't believe this is happening. Then he realizes that they've disappeared. And that's when Richard goes into the bathroom and finds his brother performing oral sex on this trans woman.
Oh my God.
Before his brother has time to react at all, Richard knocks him out. Then he grabs up Joseph's partner and hits this trans woman with such a blow that she goes down on the ground as well, knocked out cold. And after this incident, he didn't speak to his brother Joseph for several years.
Damn, so he just knocked them both out and left?
Yes.
Wow.
And essentially just like cuts his brother off. And we're going to get back to his brother soon enough because his brother is fucked up too in his own right.
Well, he's comes from the same environment as Richard.
Well, and Richard says that. We both came from the same father.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be, at the very least, have, poor social skills and things like that.
Then something bad happens to Richard. Carmine, or Meatball, his mafia associate, is killed in his kitchen. Now, Richard had nothing to do with this hit, but that's when Richard's job starts to slow down. He's not getting as much work because Meatball's not around, and Richard's feeling like, okay, maybe I need a change of pace. He gets a job working for Swift Line Trucking Company through his Teamster friend. The money was good, and the job was pretty easy, but Richard hated it. He decided he was going to make some more money. He starts targeting the trucks, hijacking luxury items from these trucks. And by the time he's 26, Richard's killed about 65 men.
Jesus. So he's always looking for an angle.
Always looking for a way to earn.
Any way to make easy, fast money.
Because he's a gambler.
Yeah, so this is a perfect job for him to get, the line on what goods are moving where and when, and to set up hijackings and things.
But 26 years old, and he's already killed 65 men.
Well, everything you've described, he's accomplished thus far, and he's only 26 years old. Just all this violence and just a wake of destruction and death behind him.
It was when Richard was working at this trucking company that he meets a young woman named Barbara Pedrici, and she changes his life. The tall Italian-American 18-year-old woman was working at the trucking company when she meets Richard at the soda machine. They stop, they have a short conversation, whatever. Now, her boss witnesses this and warns her to stay away from Richard. The boss is like, a nice girl like you doesn't need to tangle with him. He's a married man. He has 2 kids. He's no good.
Uh-oh.
Richard was also warned by the boss to stay away from Barbara too. And that's when Richard told him, you can take this job and shove it. Because at that point, Richard wasn't even interested in her. She wasn't his type. He was just kind of being friendly with her. But it's when this man tells him you can't do this that Richard's like, fuck you. I'll do what I want. It's a free country.
Yeah, because no one's going to tell him what he can and can't do.
No. So Richard leaves the company that day. The man tells him, return later and I'll pay you. So when Richard comes back in the afternoon to collect his final pay, he bumps into Barbara again. And that's when she learns that he's been fired or that he quit his job basically over her. And she feels very terrible about it, but she also kind of admires him for standing up to the boss.
Oh, come on. It's made her hot for him.
So she offers to buy him a coffee. And Barbara would later say, worst mistake I ever made. I should have run for the hills, but instead I walked out like a lamb to the slaughter.
Oh, my God.
Now, she discovered that, he's married, he's got 2 sons, but he's romantic and persistent. When she eventually expressed doubts about being with Richard because he wants to marry her. Her family likes him. They think he's a nice enough guy. She's kind of like, well, he's a lot older. He's like 8 years older than her. He's not divorced. I mean, she sees a lot of red flags with this situation.
Well, and she's right. But don't forget, Richard can turn the charm on and like a kind of Jekyll Hyde mode and be very charming and romantic. And when he wants to, he can make people like him.
Well, when she expresses doubts about marrying Richard, he pierces her back with a hunting knife and tells her, I can't live without you.
What the fuck?
Yeah, he stabs her.
Well, that's not that romantic.
Well, they marry in 1961. They have 3 children together and lived a pretty nondescript life in suburban New Jersey.
Well, I'm going to check and make sure that you love me. I'm going to go get a knife. And I'm going to slowly stab you in your back until you profess your love for me.
So during this time, his marriage to Barbara, Kuklinski holds backyard barbecues. He serves as an usher at Mass and would organize family trips to Disney World, which he called his happy place. Richard Kuklinski loves Disney World, by the way. It's like his favorite vacation spot.
That's such a strange fact right there for me. And I think the second family and second wife, if you will, is more of the, and to all appearances, because he's already been violent with her. Oh my God, he held a knife on her, when they first met, basically. And, but I think this is the picture where people get that he was this great family man. Because he's kind of projecting that out to everyone else. Everything's fine. We're just normal. We're having barbecues, a nice house, plenty of money.
Right. And in the meantime, his temper's flaring up behind the scenes, and Barbara is often enduring the brunt of his wrath. Like, he beats the shit out of his wife all the time.
Well, and that's all he knows. He thinks that's normal. He thinks he's allowed to do that.
And he would tell his children, if I kill your mother, I'm going to have to murder you too because you're all witnesses.
Jesus.
Though he would tell his older daughter, I would have a really hard time killing you because you're my favorite.
I don't know how you process your parents saying something like that.
So we are nowhere near finishing the Richard Kuklinski story. This could literally be like a 10-part podcast, but we're not going to put you through all that. This is the finale of part 1, and we will have a part 2 coming out with more Richard Kuklinski, because we have to get into the Iceman.
Yeah, because I don't think he's really dialed it up yet.
He hasn't dialed it up yet.
He's only killed 65 people.
A taste of Richard Kuklinski, but there is so much more.
My God.
We're going to wet your whistle with even more Kuklinski in part 2.
Right in your mouth.
Right in your mouth.
Jesus.
Okay. Well, what do you think so far, Dylan?
Well, I didn't know a lot of this about his backstory. As usual, you've done a great job there. But he's just he's very wrong for everything he did, but it helps paint the picture as to how he could end up there. What kind of an environment, who creates someone this cold? I don't think people are born that cold. You know what I mean?
We're not?
No, well, everybody's born with different chemical makeups of their brains, which can affect some of these sociopathic or psychopathic, tendencies or traits. But I think there has to be this environment of abuse plus your chemical makeup to create this like someone this monstrous.
Nature versus nurture.
Well, I think
sometimes it's both that contribute.
Yes, I think it has to be a perfect marriage and something like this.
You think so?
Yeah, the most monstrous people, which Panzram always has scared me. You know, my God, could imagine being put in jail with him in a 19 whatever prison, and that's my cellmate, and he's basically just telling me he's going to take it.
Oh gosh.
You know what I mean? And he's strong enough to take it, right? But no, abuse as a child, they don't develop certain motions or neural pathways or whatever, and they just don't give a fuck. But they don't feel bad about not giving a fuck either. And it's very scary.
Yes, we are. Well, we were discussing this earlier about just like being a hitman in general, and you were just like, "Oh, how could you be so cold and not feel anything?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably could do that, and I wouldn't feel anything."
Well, I was like, could you cut a body up with a chainsaw? Because Richard was talking about cutting a body up with a chainsaw. He didn't kill the person with a chainsaw, but he did dismember the body for disposal with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And I was just like, could you imagine doing that? In my voice, that means I couldn't imagine doing that. And you were just like, yeah, I could see how that would work.
Yeah,
Well,
I
what
know.
the fuck, bro?
Yeah, I know. I've always said I think I'd make a great assassin.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I know that that's probably not good.
Yeah, well, people are out there waiting for the bit to come behind us, but there is no bit.
No, I think I'm just
She's being serious.
I'm just like a natural born sociopath or something.
Oh, my God.
I just don't have a lot of emotion for other people.
Well,
I don't really like humanity. I think
Oh.
maybe that's why I like Richard Kuklinski, because he really hated humanity and thought people were stupid, and so do I.
I really think we missed an opportunity with Kuklinski for the right adoptive police father to come along and to craft a machine, a weapon to kill other bad people with. Dexter's dad
Oh, yeah.
is what I'm talking about. And Richard would have made a great Dexter.
He would have made a great Dexter.
But it needed to be funneled into something
yeah,
positive.
well, he needed to channel it.
Yes,
Yeah, for good.
right.
Like, killing the predators. Like, that's okay, cool. We all appreciated that about Dexter.
Speaking of Dexter, Stephanie, our patron who suggested this episode, and it's her birthday, pointed out that there is like a new season or some new thing of Dexter coming out.
Yeah, aren't they making is it a movie or is it like a brand new season of the show?
I'm not sure.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I didn't really like exactly how it ended for the people out there that watched it.
Well, I think most people didn't really care for the ending.
No, and I think, you know what happened to Dexter? It happens to some of the greatest shows. It ran 3 seasons too long.
Can I just say, I always found his sister really annoying, and I was so happy when she died. Spoiler alert.
Oh my God. Gonna make people mad with that.
I don't care. I do not like Deborah, and I know I probably shouldn't make fun of people, but she looks like a hammerhead shark.
Oh my God. Now that you said that, I think that as well.
Her eyes are so far apart. She
Yeah.
just looks like a fucking hammerhead shark to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey.
My daughter today told me I was very judgmental, and I was like, thank you.
Well, people judge us too, and I welcome it. Because if they're as half as funny as I am when I'm judging them, then it's some funny shit they're saying.
Then I'm just like, fuck you, Mary.
Yeah,
Fuck Mary.
exactly.
Okay.
So this was today's episode, the first part of the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski. I always mess his last name up.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. I can't wait to get into his late life.
Dastardly dark deeds
Yes.
to come.
When we get into describing some of his most notorious murders he talks about.
Are we going to make like a top 10 kills list?
Oh my God.
Maybe we should. We should do it like a Letterman top 10 countdown.
We should do that.
I'll let you do the countdown.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I might even give a David Letterman impression.
And then you can Drew Barrymore flash the audience.
Ooh.
Show us your titties.
All right. If you love this episode and you can't get enough, you can get more at Patreon/mountainmurders.com. Did I say that right?
No.
Okay. Tell them where they can find us at, Heather.
Patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast.
That's what I said.
Dylan's only been interneting for like one day.
That's
We'll
what
have
I
to
said.
Forgive him. And if you remember, all month long is Patreon month. So if you have a case you are just dying for us to cover, no pun intended, then you can become a patron this month and recommend a case, and we will cover it for Mountain Murders or for bonus episodes on Patreon.
Yes, we will do that.
You can hit us up at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. I have to say today, Dylan, I got an email from a listener named Dawn, and it made my day. It was the sweetest email, and I was so excited to get it. Really just put me in a great mood.
Do you want to read it?
No,
But
she knows what she said.
thank you, Dawn.
She read some really kind words about the podcast.
Yes, she read the email to me, and that type of feedback, we love it. And
Yeah, we are literally not a big podcast that will ignore your emails. Like we really try to answer everyone who reaches out, and we do appreciate it. So if you want to drop us a line, we'll get back to you. You will actually hear from us. It's not going to be some automated message.
It's true.
Like we'll sit down and handcraft an email back to you. But we do appreciate when we get those kind, complimentary emails. They're nice.
We do. We love the positive feedback, and we love all our listeners.
Okay, don't forget live show coming up September 24th, brownpapertickets.com. You can purchase a set of tickets that will be held at the Lazy Hiker in Sylva, North Carolina. We've got some folks driving some distance to come to the live show, and that is pretty exciting, Dylan.
Yes, we think that's all very amazing, and we can't wait to meet everyone and have just a great night of a little bit of comedy and a little bit of true crime.
Dylan can't meet to wait you.
I can't meet to wait you. And when I do meet to wait you, I just don't know if I'll ever be the same.
He's just going to sit and look at you.
Yes, it will be a night of sitting and looking and laughing.
And sitting and talking.
It's true.
And shitting and a grinning.
There will be a little bit of sitting and shitting going on. And some of the vintage chairs will be available for sale.
People don't know what you're talking about unless they listen to every episode.
Well, if they listen to every episode, they do.
You're rambly. It's time to wrap up the show. We will be back soon with a part 2. And don't forget Offbeat dropping on Wednesday. We'll be talking more about missing in the park.
I can't wait.